Explore Poirot's Casebook Audio, where Agatha Christie's Hercule Poirot cracks cases in immersive audio stories.
Imagine a stormy night on the windswept cliffs of Devonshire, where an ancient manor hides a deadly secret. A priceless compass, rumored to unlock a hidden fortune, vanishes in a scream-filled moment, and a man lies dead, stabbed in the heart of Blackthorn Hall. Who stole the cursed relic? Why was a trusted solicitor silenced? Enter Hercule Poirot, the brilliant Belgian detective whose razor-sharp mind unravels a web of lies, greed, and betrayal. In this chilling tale of murder and mystery, every clue counts, every suspect hides a secret, and the truth will shock you. Will Poirot's little grey cells uncover the killer before the compass's curse claims another life? Dive into a classic mystery where no one is what they seem, and the answers lie in the shadows of a haunted legacy. Chapter 1. The Shadow of Blackthorn Hall. In the autumn of 1925, the rolling hills of Devonshire lay cloaked in a mist that clung to the earth like a whispered secret. Blackthorn Hall, a stately manor perched on the edge of a windswept cliff, stood as a monument to both grandeur and decay. Its ivy-clad walls, weathered by centuries of storm and salt, seemed to guard their own mysteries, and it was here that Captain Arthur Hastings, ever the faithful companion, found himself summoned by an urgent letter. The letter, penned in the precise hand of Hercule Poirot, had arrived at Hastings' modest London flat 2 days prior. Its contents were brief yet commanding. Mon ami, your presence is required at Blackthorn Hall, Devon. A matter of grave importance awaits. Discretion, as always, is paramount. H.P. Hastings, accustomed to Poirot's enigmatic summons, had packed his valise with little delay, his curiosity piqued by the prospect of yet another adventure with the diminutive Belgian detective. The train journey to Devon had been tedious, the rhythmic clatter of wheels doing little to soothe Hastings' unease. Poirot's letters were rarely frivolous, and the mention of grave importance suggested a puzzle of no small consequence. As the motorcar hired from the village station wound its way through the fog-draped lanes, Hastings caught his first glimpse of Blackthorn Hall. Its silhouette loomed against the grey sky, its Gothic arches and towering chimneys evoking a sense of foreboding. The sea beyond roared faintly, a restless companion to the manor's stillness. Upon arrival, Hastings was greeted by the butler, a gaunt man named Withers, whose sallow face and measured bow betrayed nothing of the household's inner workings. "Mr. Poirot awaits you in the drawing-room, sir," Withers intoned, leading Hastings through a cavernous hall adorned with portraits of stern-faced ancestors. The air was heavy with the scent of polished oak and damp stone, and the faint creak of floorboards echoed like opulence. His patent leather shoes gleamed, his moustache was waxed to perfection, and his eyes, those sharp, green-grey eyes, sparkled with the anticipation of intellectual conquest. "Ah, Hastings, mon cher ami!" he exclaimed, turning with a flourish. "You arrive at the precise moment. C'est parfait. Come, warm yourself. We have much to discuss." Hastings, shedding his overcoat, took a seat by the fire. "Poirot, your letter was cryptic, even for you. What's afoot? And why Blackthorn Hall? It's hardly your usual haunt." Poirot's lips curled into a faint smile, one that suggested he relished the unfolding drama. "Patience, Hastings. All will be revealed in good time. For now, allow me to introduce you to our dramatis personae." He gestured towards the room's occupants, who had gathered in an uneasy cluster near a grand piano. The atmosphere was one of strained civility, as though each person were guarding a secret they dared not voice. First was Lady Eleanor Blackthorn, the widowed mistress of the hall. A woman of perhaps 50, she possessed an ethereal beauty, her silver-streaked hair swept into an elegant chignon. Yet her eyes, shadowed with fatigue, hinted at a burden far heavier than her morning attire suggested. Beside her stood her nephew, Lionel Blackthorne, a lanky young man in his late 20s whose restless fingers toyed with a cigarette case. His smile was charming but fleeting, as though it masked a deeper unease. Next was Miss Clara Henshaw, Lady Eleanor's companion, a plain woman of indeterminate age whose sharp gaze belied her demure posture. She clutched a leather-bound notebook, her knuckles white with tension. Across from her sat Dr. Rupert Vance, the family physician, a stout man with a florid complexion and a penchant for adjusting his spectacles. His jovial demeanor seemed forced, and his eyes darted towards the door as if expecting an interruption. Finally, there was Mr. Gerald Carver, a solicitor from London, whose presence seemed oddly out of place. His tailored suit and polished briefcase suggested a man accustomed to order, yet his furrowed brow and frequent glances at his pocket watch betrayed a nervous disposition. The group, though outwardly cordial, radiated an undercurrent of suspicion that Poirot's keen senses surely detected. "These, Hastings, are the residents and guests of Blackthorne Hall," Poirot said, his voice low and deliberate. "And it is among them that we shall find the key to a most curious affair." Hastings leaned forward, his curiosity now fully ablaze. "An affair? Poirot, don't keep me in suspense. What's happened?" Poirot raised a hand, his expression one of theatrical restraint. "All in good time, mon ami. Let us first establish the scene. Last night, at precisely 11 o'clock, a most alarming event occurred in this very house. A scream was heard, followed. Valuable object had vanished from Lady Eleanor's private study. "A theft?" Hastings ventured, his mind already racing. Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Not merely a theft, Hastings. The object in question is a compass, a family heirloom known as the Blackthorne compass. It is said to be of great antiquity, its origins shrouded in legend. Some even claim it is cursed, guiding its possessor to misfortune. But that, naturellement, is superstition. What matters is that the compass is gone, and with it, a sense of safety in this house." Lady Eleanor, who had been listening silently, spoke at last, her voice trembling yet resolute. "Mr. Poirot, the compass is more than a trinket. It has been in my family for generations, passed down from father to son. Its loss is a blow to our legacy, and I fear a sign of something far graver." Poirot inclined his head, his expression one of profound sympathy. "Madame, I assure you, Hercule Poirot does not take such matters lightly. The compass shall be found, and the truth behind its disappearance revealed. But I must know more. Tell me, who was present in the house last night?" Lady Eleanor recounted the evening's events with measured precision. The household had dined together at 8, a formal affair marked by polite but strained conversation. Afterward, the group had retired to the drawing-room for coffee and cards. At 10:30, Lady Eleanor had excused herself to her study, where she often worked late. The others remained in the drawing-room until the scream shattered the night's calm. "And the scream?" Poirot pressed. "Whose was it?" Lady Eleanor hesitated. "It was mine, Mr. Poirot. I had gone to my study to retrieve some papers when I noticed the compass was missing from its case. The glass door of the cabinet was shattered, and I could not help but cry out." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And the time, madame? You are certain it was 11 o'clock?" "Quite certain," she replied. "The grandfather clock in the hall had just struck the hour." Poirot nodded, his mind already at work. "Bien, and the rest of you, where were you at this precise moment?" The answers came quickly, each tinged with defensiveness. Lionel claimed to have been in the billiard room, practicing shots alone. Miss Henshaw said she was in her room, writing in her journal. Dr. Vance insisted he had stepped outside for a cigarette, braving the chill night air. Mr. Carver, the solicitor, maintained he was in the library, reviewing documents for Lady Eleanor. Each alibi was plausible, yet none was corroborated. Hastings, watching the exchange, felt a familiar thrill. Poirot's questions, though seemingly innocuous, were like the first moves in a chess game, each designed to probe, to unsettle, to reveal. The Belgian detective paced the room.
The Blackthorn compass is no mere theft. It is a puzzle, and Hercule Poirot delights in puzzles. Rest assured, the truth will not elude me. As the group dispersed, their unease palpable, Hastings drew Poirot aside. "What do you make of it, old chap? A stolen compass? A scream in the night? It's all rather theatrical, don't you think?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Theatrical, yes, Hastings, but every performance has a purpose. The compass is but the opening act. Mark my words, mon ami, there is more to this mystery than meets the eye." The fire crackled, casting long shadows across the room. Outside, the wind howled and the sea churned against the cliffs. Blackthorn Hall, with its secrets and its silences, seemed to pulse with anticipation. For Hercule Poirot, the game had begun. Chapter 2. The Shadow Falls. The morning following Hercule Poirot's arrival at Blackthorn Hall broke with a sullen dawn, the sky heavy with clouds that mirrored the unease within the manor's walls. The sea beyond the cliffs churned restlessly, its distant roar a grim counterpoint to the silence that had settled over the household. Captain Hastings, roused early by the unfamiliar creaks of the ancient house, found himself drawn to the dining room, where a somber breakfast was being served. The air was thick with tension, as though the theft of the Blackthorn compass had cast a pall over the entire estate. But it was not merely the theft that darkened the mood. As the household gathered, Withers, the butler, delivered a piece of news that struck like a thunderbolt. "Lady Eleanor," he announced, his voice trembling despite its measured tone, "has discovered something most distressing. Mr. Gerald Carver, the solicitor, was found dead in his room this morning. It appears he has been murdered." A collective gasp rose from the table. Lionel Blackthorn's coffee cup clattered against its saucer. Miss Clara Henshaw's hand flew to her mouth, and Dr. Rupert Vance's florid face paled to an ashen hue. Hastings, his heart pounding, glanced toward Poirot, who sat at the head of the table, his expression unreadable save for the faint glint in his green-grey eyes. The Belgian detective sipped his tisane with deliberate calm, as though the announcement were merely an interesting development in a chess match. "Murdered?" Hastings exclaimed, unable to contain himself. "Good heavens, Poirot! This changes everything. First a theft, now a murder. Surely they're connected." Poirot raised a hand, his gesture both commanding and soothing. "Calme-toi, mon ami. All things are connected, but we must not leap to conclusions. Let us first ascertain the facts. Withers, pray, tell us precisely what was found." The butler, standing rigidly by the sideboard, recounted the grim discovery. At 7 o'clock that morning, Lady Eleanor had gone to Mr. Carver's room to entered and discovered the solicitor slumped over his desk, a letter opener driven deep into his back. The room was in disarray. Papers scattered, a chair overturned, and a window left open to the chill morning air. Lady Eleanor, overcome with shock, had summoned Withers, who in turn had alerted the household. "And the local police?" Poirot inquired, his tone deceptively mild. "They have been notified, sir," Withers replied. "Inspector Grayson is expected within the hour. Lady Eleanor has requested that no one enter Mr. Carver's room until his arrival." "Très bien," Poirot murmured, his fingers steepled before him. "Then we shall wait. But not idly. No. Hastings, come. We must see this room for ourselves, before the good inspector tramples the evidence with his well-meaning boots." Ignoring the murmurs of protest from the others, Poirot led Hastings through the manor's labyrinthine corridors to the guest wing, where Mr. Carver's room was situated. The door, still ajar, revealed a scene of controlled chaos. The solicitor's body remained at the desk, his head resting on a pile of legal documents, the letter opener protruding grotesquely from his back. Blood had pooled on the polished wood, its edges already drying to a dark crimson. The window, as Withers had described, stood open, admitting a damp breeze that stirred the curtains. Poirot moved with the precision of a cat, his eyes darting from detail to detail. He examined the body without touching it, noting the angle of the letter opener and the position of Carver's hands, which clutched a crumpled sheet of paper. "Intéressant," he muttered, crouching to inspect the floor. "Observe, Hastings, the carpet. There are faint traces of mud near the window. Not much, but enough to suggest someone entered or left this way." Hastings peered at the faint smudges, his brow furrowed. "But the window's on the second floor, Poirot. Surely no one could climb up without a ladder?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "A ladder, a trellis, or perhaps a rope? The human mind is ingenious when it seeks to deceive. But come, let us examine the desk." The desk was a clutter of papers, legal contracts, letters, and a small notebook filled with cryptic notations. Poirot's gloved fingers carefully lifted the crumpled paper from Carver's grasp. It was a half-finished letter, addressed to Lady Eleanor, its contents abruptly cut off. "My dear Lady Eleanor, I must warn you of a grave danger concerning the compass. I have discovered—" The sentence ended in a jagged scrawl, as though the writer had been interrupted by his fatal blow. "A warning," Hastings said, his voice low. He knew something about the compass, didn't he? Something worth killing for. Before Hastings could respond, the sound of heavy footsteps announced the arrival of Inspector Grayson, a burly man with a weathered face and a no-nonsense demeanor. "Mr. Poirot," he said gruffly, "I was told you'd be here. I'll thank you to leave the investigating to the professionals." Poirot's mustache twitched with amusement. "Mais bien sûr, Inspector. Hercule Poirot is merely an observer, a humble seeker of truth. But perhaps you will permit me to offer a small observation. The mud on the carpet near the window, it is not from the garden below. The soil there is dark and loamy, while this is red clay, found only on the cliffs beyond the estate." Grayson's eyes narrowed, but he made no reply, turning instead to examine the body. Poirot, undeterred, continued his inspection, noting the position of the overturned chair and the absence of any fingerprints on the letter opener's handle. "Wiped clean," he murmured. "A careful mind at work." As the inspector began his methodical investigation, Poirot and Hastings withdrew to the corridor, where Lady Eleanor awaited, her face pale but composed. "Mr. Poirot," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "this is no longer a matter of a stolen heirloom. A man is dead. I beg you, find the truth." Poirot bowed slightly, his eyes never leaving hers. "Madame, the truth is my only pursuit. But I must ask, did Mr. Carver speak to you of any concerns regarding the compass? Any hint of danger?" Lady Eleanor hesitated, her fingers twisting the lace of her handkerchief. "He was preoccupied last night. He mentioned that he had uncovered something unsettling in the family records, something about the compass's history. But he refused to say more until he had confirmed his suspicions." Poirot's gaze sharpened. "And these records, where are they kept?" "In the library," she replied. "But they are extensive, Mr. Poirot. Generations of documents, many in disarray." "Then that is where we shall begin," Poirot declared. "Hastings, come. The library may hold the key to this puzzle." The library of Blackthorn Hall was a vast, shadowed room, its shelves groaning under the weight of leather-bound tomes and yellowed manuscripts. As Poirot and Hastings began their search, The detective's methodical nature came to the fore. He examined each volume with care, his fingers tracing the spines as though they might whisper their secrets. Hastings, less patient, rifled through a stack of papers, his frustration mounting. "Poirot, this could take days," he protested. "What are we even looking for?" "A thread, mon ami?" Poirot replied, his voice calm but firm. "A single thread that connects the compass to Mr. Carver's death. Every crime has its pattern, and every pattern its flaw." After an hour of searching, Poirot paused, his attention caught.
Its ink faded, but the title was clear. Opening it, Poirot's eyes gleamed with triumph. "Voilà, Hastings. The past speaks, and we shall listen." The journal, written in the spidery hand of a long-dead Blackthorn ancestor, detailed the compass's origins. Crafted in the 17th century, it was said to have guided a Blackthorn sailor through treacherous seas, its needle imbued with an uncanny accuracy. But the journal hinted at a darker truth. The compass was tied to a blood feud, its possession contested by rival families, leading to betrayal and death. One passage, heavily underlined, read, "He who holds the compass holds the key to the Blackthorn fortune. But beware, its truth brings ruin." Hastings, reading over Poirot's shoulder, felt a chill. "A fortune? Poirot, do you think Carver found something about this? Something worth killing for?" Poirot closed the journal, his expression inscrutable. "Perhaps, Hastings. But the compass is still missing, and its absence is no coincidence. We must speak to the others, their alibis, their secrets. They will lead us to the truth." As they left the library, the wind howled outside, and the shadows of Blackthorn Hall seemed to deepen. The murder of Gerald Carver had transformed the mystery of the stolen compass into something far more sinister. For Hercule Poirot, the game had grown deadly, and the stakes had never been higher. The atmosphere in Blackthorn Hall grew heavier with each passing hour, as though the very walls absorbed the weight of Gerald Carver's murder. The mist outside had thickened, cloaking the estate in a grey shroud that seemed to mirror the suspicion clouding the minds of its inhabitants. Captain Hastings, trailing behind Hercule Poirot as they returned from the library, felt the oppressive silence of the manor pressing upon him. The discovery of the ancient journal, with its cryptic warnings about the Blackthorn compass, had only deepened the mystery, and Hastings sensed that Poirot's formidable mind was already weaving the scattered threads into a pattern only he could see. In the drawing room, the household had reconvened, summoned by Poirot's polite but insistent request. Inspector Grayson, still bristling from Poirot's earlier observation about the mud, stood by the fireplace, his notebook open and his expression one of grudging tolerance. Lady Eleanor sat rigidly in an armchair, her hands clasped tightly, while Lionel Blackthorn paced near the window, his cigarette case forgotten in his agitation. Miss Clara Henshaw, perched on the edge of a sofa, a notebook clutched like a shield, and Dr. Rupert Vance, his spectacles fogged from nervous perspiration, mopped his brow with a handkerchief. The air was thick with unspoken accusations. Authority. His small, immaculate figure, clad in a perfectly tailored suit, seemed almost incongruous amidst the tension. Yet his presence commanded attention. "Messieurs et mesdames," he began, his voice clear and measured. "The death of Mr. Gerald Carver is a tragedy, but it is also a puzzle, and Hercule Poirot does not rest until every piece of the puzzle is in its proper place. I ask for your cooperation as we seek the truth. Let us begin with the events of last night, precisement at the hour of 11, when Lady Eleanor's scream alerted the household to the theft of the compass." Hastings, seated near the door, marveled at Poirot's ability to transform a room of strangers
into a stage for his inquiry. The detective's green-grey eyes swept over the group, noting every twitch, every averted glance. "Lady Eleanor," Poirot continued, "you have told us you were in your study when you discovered the compass missing. But let us be exact. What did you do in the minutes before the scream?" Lady Eleanor's composure faltered, her fingers tightening on her handkerchief. "I had been working on correspondence," she said, her voice steady but strained. "At 10:30, I left the drawing room and went to my study. I was reviewing some papers when I noticed the cabinet door was ajar. The glass was shattered and the compass was gone. I screamed. It was instinctive, I suppose." Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. "And you saw no one in the corridor as you went to your study? No sound, no movement?" "None," she replied firmly. "The house was quiet, save for the clock striking the hour." Poirot turned to Lionel Blackthorne, who had paused his pacing, to light a cigarette. "Monsieur Blackthorne, you claim you were in the billiard room at 11 o'clock. Alone, n'est-ce pas? A curious choice, to play billiards alone so late in the evening." Lionel's jaw tightened, but his tone remained casual. "I often play at night. Helps me think. I heard the scream and ran to the hall, same as everyone else." "Bien," Poirot said, his eyes narrowing slightly. "And you, Miss Henshaw? You were in your room, writing in your journal, a most diligent habit. Did you hear anything unusual before the scream?" Miss Henshaw's lips pursed, her gaze darting to Lady Eleanor before returning to Poirot. "No, Mr. Poirot. My room is at the far end of the guest wing. I heard nothing until Lady Eleanor's cry." Dr. Vance, clearing his throat, spoke up unprompted. "I was outside, as I said, smoking by the terrace. The sea was loud, but I heard the scream and came running. Found everyone in the hall, all in a panic." Poirot's moustache twitched, a sign Hastings recognized as skepticism. "To the house than I thought. It's all a bit of a blur, you know." Poirot made no reply, turning instead to Inspector Grayson. "Inspector, you have examined Mr. Carver's room. What are your findings?" Grayson, clearly reluctant to share his investigation with an outsider, grunted. "The man was stabbed in the back with a letter opener. No fingerprints on the weapon, wiped clean, as you said. The window was open, and there's that mud you pointed out. We're looking into it. Looks like someone got in, did the deed, and slipped out the same way." Poirot's smile was polite, but tinged with condescension. "A tidy theory, Inspector. But theories must be tested. Tell me, have you considered the time of death?" Grayson frowned. "Dr. Vance here says it was likely between midnight and 2 in the morning, based on the state of the body." Vance nodded vigorously. "Rigor mortis had just begun to set in when I examined him at 7. The blood was congealing too. I'd say 1 o'clock, give or take." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Intéressant. And yet, Mr. Carver's letter, interrupted mid-sentence, suggests he was writing at the moment of his death. A man does not write calmly as an intruder climbs through his window, no? We must consider the possibility that the murder occurred closer to 11, perhaps shortly after the theft." Grayson's scowl deepened, but he made no rebuttal. Poirot, sensing the room's growing unease, clapped his hands lightly. "Monsieur et Mesdames, I thank you for your candor, but I must ask one more question. The Blackthorn compass. Does anyone know of a reason why Mr. Carver might have been investigating its history?" A heavy silence followed. Lady Eleanor's eyes flickered with something like fear, while Lionel's cigarette trembled slightly in his hand. Miss Henshaw's grip on her notebook tightened, and Dr. Vance coughed nervously. At last, Lady Eleanor spoke, her voice barely audible. "Mr. Carver was reviewing the family estate. He mentioned irregularities in the records, something about the compass's provenance. He was vague, but he seemed troubled. Poirot nodded, filing the information away. Merci, madame. That is most helpful. Now I suggest we all retire to our duties. The truth, it will not hide for long. As the group dispersed, Hastings followed Poirot to the terrace, where the detective stood gazing at the cliffs beyond. The wind tugged at his coat, but he seemed oblivious to the chill. Poirot, Hastings ventured. What do you make of it? Carver's murder, the compass, the journal, it's all connected, isn't it? Poirot's gaze remained fixed on the horizon. Naturellement, Hastings. The compass is the heart of this mystery, and
Inspector believes.
Hastings frowned. You think someone's lying? Poirot turned, his eyes alight with purpose. Not one, Hastings, several. Each has a secret, and each secret is a thread in the tapestry of this crime. We must pull gently, mon ami, until the whole design is revealed. As they returned to the house, the sound of the sea grew louder, its relentless rhythm a reminder of the secrets Blackthorn Hall held. For Hercule Poirot, the arrival at the heart of the mystery was only the beginning. The game was afoot, and he would not rest until every lie was exposed and every truth laid bare. Chapter 4. The Web of Questions. The morning mist had burned away, leaving Blackthorn Hall bathed in a pale, watery sunlight that did little to dispel the gloom within its walls. The murder of Gerald Carver had cast a shadow over the household, and the theft of the Blackthorn compass now seemed a sinister prelude to a far graver crime. Hercule Poirot, undeterred by the mounting tension, had resolved to question each member of the household individually, believing that the truth lay not in grand gestures, but in the subtle contradictions of human behavior. Captain Hastings, ever his loyal shadow, followed as Poirot began his meticulous inquiry, his notebook at the ready to capture the detective's observations. The first to be interviewed was Lady Eleanor Blackthorn, who received Poirot in her private study, a room of faded elegance, its walls lined with books and its windows overlooking the turbulent sea. The shattered glass cabinet, where the compass had once rested, stood as a silent accusation. Lady Eleanor, seated at her desk, maintained an air of dignified composure, though her hands betrayed a faint tremor as she smoothed the folds of her mourning dress. "Madame," Poirot began, his tone courteous, yet probing, "I wish to understand the events of last night with the utmost clarity. You retired to this study at 10:30, you say, and discovered the theft at 11. But tell me, what drew you to the cabinet at that precise moment?" Lady Eleanor's eyes flickered toward the broken cabinet, then back to Poirot. "I had no particular reason," she said, her voice measured. "I often check the compass before retiring. It was a habit, a way to honor my late husband's memory. He cherished it, you see." Poirot nodded, his fingers tracing the edge of his moustache. "Oui, a touching sentiment, and yet the cabinet's glass was shattered. A violent act, n'est-ce pas? Did you hear nothing? No sound of breaking glass before your scream?" "None," she replied firmly. "The house was silent. The clock struck 11, and I noticed the cabinet ajar. That is when I saw the compass was gone." Poirot's gaze— "Handkerchief." "He was a solicitor, Mr. Poirot. Men in his profession often make enemies. But he never mentioned anything specific. Only, he seemed anxious yesterday, more so than usual. He kept glancing at his watch, as though expecting someone." "Intéressant," Poirot murmured, making a mental note. "Merci, madame. You have been most helpful." Next, Poirot summoned Lionel Blackthorn to the library, where the young man slouched into a chair, his cigarette case once again in hand. His charm, so evident the previous evening, had given way to a restless irritability, his eyes darting toward the door as though he longed to escape. "Monsieur Blackthorne," Poirot said, his voice deceptively mild, "you are in the billiard-room at 11 o'clock, alone. A curious choice for a man who claims to enjoy company. Tell me, what were you thinking of as you played?" Lionel shrugged, lighting a cigarette with a trembling hand. "Nothing much. Just passing the time. I'm not one for cards or idle chatter. Billiard suits me." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And yet, you heard Lady Eleanor's scream from the billiard-room, which is at the far end of the house. Your hearing, it must be most acute." Lionel's smile was strained. "The house isn't that big, Mr. Poirot. Sound carries. I ran to the hall and found everyone there, all in a tizzy." "Bien," Poirot said, his tone betraying nothing. "And Mr. Carver, did you speak with him yesterday? Perhaps about the compass or the family estate?" Lionel exhaled a plume of smoke, his expression guarded. "Hardly knew the man. He was Aunt Eleanor's solicitor, always fussing over papers. If he was poking into the compass, he didn't tell me." Poirot nodded, dismissing Lionel with a wave of his hand. As the young man left, Hastings leaned forward. "He's hiding something, Poirot. Did you see how jumpy he was?" "Naturellement, Hastings," Poirot replied, his eyes gleaming. "But what he hides, we shall discover. Let us proceed." Miss Clara Henshaw was next, her prim figure seated stiffly in the drawing-room. Her notebook, ever present, lay closed in her lap, and her sharp eyes met Poirot's with a mixture of defiance and unease. "Miss Henshaw," Poirot began, "you are Lady Eleanor's companion, oui? A position of trust. Tell me, what is your impression of the Blackthorn compass? Did Mr. Carver ever discuss it with you?" Clara's lips pursed, her fingers brushing the notebook's cover. "The compass was a family heirloom, nothing more. Mr. Carver asked me about it once, its history, its value. I told him I knew little. My duties are to Lady Eleanor, not to old relics." Poirot tilted his head, his gaze piercing. "And last night, you were writing in your journal at 11
More. There is nothing in it that concerns this affair." "Perhaps," Poirot said, his smile enigmatic. "But the mind, it records everything. Even the smallest detail may be significant." Dr. Rupert Vance was the last to be questioned, his florid face glistening with sweat as he sat in the conservatory, surrounded by wilting ferns. His jovial demeanor had vanished, replaced by a nervous agitation that set Hastings on edge. "Dr. Vance," Poirot said, his voice soft but relentless, "you were outside on the terrace at 11, smoking a cigarette. A chilly night for such a habit. Did you see anyone near the house? A shadow, perhaps? Or a light in Mr. Carver's window?" Vance adjusted his spectacles, his hands trembling. "No, nothing like that. It was dark and the wind was fierce. I was focused on my cigarette. When I heard the scream, I ran inside." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "And the mud on your shoes, Doctor? The red clay from the cliffs, was it there when you returned to the house?" Vance blinked, caught off guard. "Mud? I suppose there might have been some. The terrace is near the cliff path, after all. I didn't notice." "Bien," Poirot said, rising with a graceful nod. "You have all been most cooperative. The truth, it begins to take shape." As the interviews concluded, Poirot and Hastings retreated to the terrace, where the detective stood gazing at the cliffs, his hands clasped behind his back. Hastings, frustrated by the lack of clear answers, could not contain his impatience. "Poirot, they're all lying, aren't they? Or at least holding something back. But how do we sort through it all?" Poirot turned, his expression one of quiet triumph. "Mon ami, the lies are the key.
Each one is a thread. Together they form a web. Lady Eleanor's hesitation, Lionel's nervousness, Miss Henshaw's guarded notebook, Dr. Vance's muddy shoes, they all point to something hidden. And then there is the compass, the heart of it all. Hastings frowned. But what about Carver's letter? He was warning Lady Eleanor about the compass. Surely that's the motive for his murder. Poirot's smile was cryptic. Perhaps, Hastings? But a motive is not enough. We must find the means, the opportunity, and the truth behind the compass's disappearance. I suspect, mon cher, that we are dealing with not one crime, but two, intertwined like the strands of a rope. As they returned to the house, the wind carried the distant cry of a gull, and the shadows of Blackthorn Hall seemed to deepen. Poirot's questions had stirred the waters, and the ripples were beginning to reveal a pattern. The murder of Gerald Carver and the theft of the compass were linked, but the nature of that link remained elusive. For Hercule Poirot, the web of questions
Bruised with storm clouds, the air heavy with the promise of rain. The murder of Gerald Carver and the theft of the Blackthorn compass had transformed the manor into a cauldron of suspicion, where every glance and whisper seemed laden with hidden meaning. Hercule Poirot, undaunted by the household's growing unease, continued his investigation with the precision of a watchmaker, his mind sifting through the alibis and half-truths offered by the suspects. Captain Hastings, ever at his side, felt the weight of the mystery pressing upon him, his instincts telling him that the truth was tantalizingly close, yet obscured by a fog of deception. Inspector Grayson, determined to assert his authority, had taken to questioning the household staff, his brusque manner eliciting little beyond polite deference. His theory, shared with Poirot over a cup of tepid tea in the dining room, was that an outsider, perhaps a local thief familiar with the cliffs, had scaled the manor's walls, stolen the compass, and murdered Carver when discovered. "It's the only thing that fits," Grayson declared, his notebook filled with scrawled diagrams of the estate's perimeter. "The mud by the window, the open latch, it points to an intruder." Poirot, sipping his tisane with fastidious care, raised an eyebrow. "Mon cher Inspector, your theory is most convenient. An outsider, oui, absolves the household of guilt. But consider the letter opener, wiped clean of fingerprints. An intruder in a moment of panic does not pause to polish his weapon. No, this is the work of someone deliberate, someone who knows the house and its secrets." Grayson bristled but said nothing, his attention diverted by Withers, who entered to announce that the staff had been accounted for, all claiming to have been in their quarters at the time of the scream and the murder. Poirot, however, seemed more interested in the inspector's fixation on an external culprit. "Hastings," he murmured as they left the dining room, "the good inspector is chasing a shadow. The true criminal walks among us, hiding behind a mask of innocence." The next destination was the billiard room, where Poirot wished to examine Lionel Blackthorn's alibi. The room, dimly lit by a single chandelier, smelled of polished wood and stale tobacco. The billiard table stood at its center, its green baize pristine, save for a faint chalk mark near one pocket. Poirot circled the table, his eyes scanning every detail. "Lionel claims he was here, practicing shots," he said, his voice low. "Yet the cue sticks are untouched."
Table, its brand matching the one Lionel favored. Poirot retrieved it with a handkerchief, his eyes gleaming.
This was smoked recently, Hastings. The ash is fresh, not yet scattered by the draught. Yet Lionel claims he ran to the hall immediately after the scream. Why then is his cigarette here, so carefully discarded? Before Hastings could respond, a commotion in the hall drew their attention. Inspector Grayson, red-faced and agitated, was confronting Dr. Rupert Vance, who stood clutching a medical bag, his spectacles askew. "I found this in your room, Doctor," Grayson said, holding up a small vial of clear liquid. "Care to explain why you've got poison in your possession?" Vance's face drained of color, his voice trembling. "Poison? That's absurd. It's merely a sedative for my patients. I keep it locked in my bag, always have." Grayson's eyes narrowed. "Locked, you say? Then why was it sitting on your desk, plain as day? And why does it smell faintly of almonds, like cyanide?" The accusation hung in the air, drawing gasps from the staff who had gathered nearby. Hastings, watching the scene unfold, felt a surge of excitement. Poirot. Could Vance be our man? Poison? A letter opener? Maybe he's covering his tracks. Poirot, however, remained unmoved, his gaze fixed on Vance's trembling hands. "Calme-toi, Hastings. The doctor is nervous, yes, but not guilty. Not yet. The vial is a distraction, a red herring meant to mislead. Observe how quickly the inspector seizes upon it. The true criminal wishes us to look elsewhere." Dismissing the commotion, Poirot led Hastings to the terrace, where Dr. Vance had claimed to be smoking at 11 o'clock. The stone flags were damp from the morning's mist, and a faint trail of red clay led from the cliff path to the terrace's edge. Poirot crouched, examining the marks with care. "The clay, Hastings," he said softly. "It is the same as that found in Mr. Carver's room. But see here, the trail stops abruptly, as though the walker paused and turned back. Why?" Hastings, squinting at the faint marks, shook his head. Perhaps they changed their mind, or saw something that made them retreat. Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Or perhaps, mon ami, the trail was made to deceive. Someone wishes us to believe an outsider came this way. But the clay is too evenly spread, too deliberate. No, this is the work of someone within the house." Returning indoors, Poirot sought out Miss Clara Henshaw, who was found in the conservatory, her notebook open as she scribbled furiously. Her sharp eyes met Poirot's with a flicker of defiance. "Miss Henshaw," he said, his tone gentle but insistent, "your journal intrigues me. You write diligently, yet you guard its contents. May I ask what you recorded last night after the scream?" Clara's grip on the notebook tightened, her lips thinning. "Personal thoughts, Mr. Poirot. Nothing that concerns the theft or Mr. Carver's death. I was in my room, as I said, and heard nothing until the scream." Poirot tilted his head, his gaze piercing. "And yet your room is near Mr. Carver's, is it not? A scream from the study might be heard, but a struggle in a nearby room, surely that would not escape your notice." Clara's cheeks flushed, but she held his gaze. "I heard nothing, Mr. Poirot. I am a light sleeper, but the walls are thick and the sea was loud last night." Poirot nodded, dismissing her with a polite bow. As she left, Hastings whispered, "She's hiding something, Poirot. That notebook, she's clutching it like it's her lifeline." "Précisément," Poirot replied, his voice low. "The notebook is a key, but not one we can force open, yet. We must be patient, Hastings. The red herrings multiply, but they cannot obscure the truth forever." As evening fell, the household gathered for a tense dinner, the empty chair at Mr. Carver's place, a grim reminder of the crime. Inspector Grayson, emboldened by his discovery of the vial, continued to press Dr. Vance, while Lionel's agitation grew, his fingers drumming on the table. Lady Eleanor, pale and withdrawn, spoke little, her eyes darting to the shattered cabinet in the study, visible through the open door. Miss Henshaw, meanwhile, kept her notebook close, her expression unreadable. Poirot, observing the scene, leaned toward Hastings.
The inspector's focus on Dr. Vance is a distraction, mon ami. The vial, the mud, the cigarette butt. These are the threads of a clever deception. But Hercule Poirot sees through such tricks. The compass and the murder are linked, and the key lies in the secrets each suspect guards. As the meal ended, a sudden clap of thunder shook the house, and the first drops of rain began to fall. The storm, long brewing, had arrived, and with it, the sense that the truth was drawing closer. For Poirot, the red herrings were merely obstacles, and his little grey cells were already at work, unravelling the web of lies that concealed the heart of the mystery. Chapter 6. A Clue in the Detail. The storm that broke over Blackthorn Hall that evening was as fierce as the tension within its walls. Rain lashed the windows, and thunder rolled across the cliffs, casting an ominous pall over the manor. The murder of Gerald Carver and the theft of the Blackthorn compass had woven a tapestry of suspicion, and Hercule Poirot, with his unerring instinct for detail, was determined to find the single thread that would unravel the mystery. Captain Hastings, ever loyal but increasingly frustrated by the web of half-truths,
Crystal, where Withers stood rigidly, his hands clasped behind his back. Poirot, his eyes sharp as ever, wasted no time on pleasantries. "Monsieur Withers," he began, "you are the eyes and ears of this house. Nothing escapes your notice, n'est-ce pas? Tell me, what did you observe on the night of the theft, before Lady Eleanor's scream?" Withers' expression remained unchanged, but a faint tightening of his jaw betrayed his unease. "I was in the servants' quarters, sir, preparing for the night. I heard nothing unusual until the scream at 11 o'clock. I then went to the hall, where I found Lady Eleanor and the others." Poirot tilted his head, his gaze piercing. "And Mr. Carver? Did you see him after dinner, perhaps in the library or near his room?" Withers hesitated, a flicker of discomfort crossing his face. "Mr. Carver passed through the hall around 10, sir. He seemed in a hurry, carrying a briefcase. I assumed he was going to his room or the library." "Intéressant," Poirot murmured, his fingers brushing his moustache. "And his manner, was it agitated? Preoccupied, perhaps?" "He was distracted, sir," Withers admitted. "He glanced at his watch several times, as though expecting something, but he said nothing to me." Poirot nodded, dismissing the butler with a wave. As Withers departed, Hastings leaned forward. "Poirot, Carver was clearly onto something. That briefcase, do you think it contained the papers he was writing about in his letter?" "Précisément, Hastings," Poirot replied, his eyes gleaming. "The briefcase is a clue, but it is not the only one. Come, let us return to Mr. Carver's room. There is a detail I wish to examine." The guest room, now cordoned off by Inspector Grayson's orders, was a scene of preserved chaos. The body had been removed, but the desk remained cluttered with papers, the letter opener still embedded in a blood-stained blotter. Poirot's attention, however, was drawn to the window, where the faint traces of red clay still marked the carpet. He crouched, examining the smudges with a magnifying glass, his expression one of intense concentration. "Observe, Hastings," he said, pointing to the clay. "The marks are shallow, almost delicate. They do not suggest the heavy tread of an intruder climbing through the window. No, they are too precise, as though placed there with care." Hastings frowned, peering at the smudges. "You mean someone staged the scene? But why go to such trouble?" Poirot rose, his smile cryptic.
To mislead, mon ami. To make us believe an outsider committed the crime.
Cards. 10:30. Lady Eleanor to study. 11 o'clock. Scream. Mon Dieu, Poirot murmured, his eyes alight. This timetable is not Mr. Carver's work. The handwriting is different from his letter, neater, more feminine. And see here. He pointed to a faint smudge of ink on the edge of the paper, barely visible. This is not the ink of the pen on the desk. It is blue, while Carver's pen uses black. Hastings' eyes widened. You think someone else wrote this? But who? And why? Poirot's gaze was distant, his mind racing. To establish alibis, perhaps, or to obscure the truth. This timetable is a map of the evening, but it is also a lie. Someone wishes us to believe the events unfolded precisely as written, but the ink, the smudge, it betrays them. Leaving the room, Poirot led Hastings to the study, where the shattered cabinet stood as a silent witness to the theft. The detective examined the broken glass, his fingers tracing the jagged edges. The glass was broken from the inside, he said softly. The shards fall outward, toward the room. This was no forced entry, Hastings. The cabinet was broken to make the theft appear violent. Hastings, struggling to keep up, shook his head. But why steal the compass at all? If it's tied to the murder, why not just take it quietly? Poirot's smile was grim. Because the theft was meant to be discovered. It was a distraction, a spark to ignite suspicion. The compass is the key, but not in the way we first thought. Its absence draws our attention, while the true crime, the murder, hides in its shadow. As they left the study, they encountered Miss Clara Henshaw in the corridor, her notebook clutched tightly to her chest. Her eyes, sharp and wary, met Poirot's, and for a moment, a silent challenge passed between them. "Miss Henshaw," Poirot said, his tone deceptively mild, "you're a woman of observation. Have you noticed anything unusual in the household today? A glance, a gesture, perhaps a word out of place?" Clara's lips thinned, her voice cool. "I notice many things, Mr. Poirot, but nothing that would help you. People are frightened, that's all. A man is dead, and the compass is gone. It's only natural." Poirot inclined his head, his smile polite but unyielding. "Naturellement. But the smallest detail can be the most revealing. Your notebook, for instance, does it contain observations of this household?" Clara's grip tightened, her cheeks flushing. "My notebook is private, Mr. Poirot, I have told you that." "Oui, and I respect your privacy," Poirot said, his eyes never leaving hers. "But the truth, it has a way of emerging, no?" As Clara hurried away, Hastings whispered, "She's definitely hiding something, Poirot. That notebook, do you think it's the key to all this?" Poirot's Clay, these are the details that will lead us to the truth. The criminal is clever, but no one is cleverer than Hercule Poirot. As the storm raged outside, the manor seemed to close in around them, its shadows deepening with each revelation. The timetable, with its precise lies, and the carefully staged theft pointed to a mind both cunning and desperate. For Poirot, the clue in the detail was a beacon, guiding in through the fog of deception toward the heart of the mystery. Chapter 7. Lies Beneath the Surface. The storm that battered Blackthorn Hall had settled into a relentless drizzle by the following morning, cloaking the estate in a damp, oppressive stillness. The murder of Gerald Carver and the theft of the Blackthorn compass had frayed the nerves of the household, and the air was thick with unspoken accusations. Hercule Poirot, ever the master of observation, sensed that the web of deceit was beginning to unravel, its threads strained by the weight of hidden truths. Captain Hastings, though buoyed by Poirot's confidence, felt the mounting tension, his mind wrestling with the clues that seemed to point in every direction at once. Poirot, undeterred by the gloom, had resolved to press deeper into the secrets of the household. His interviews and discoveries, the staged mud, the shattered cabinet, the mysterious timetable, had convinced him that the truth lay not in the obvious, but in the subtle contradictions of those around him. "Mon ami," he said to Hastings, as they stood in the corridor outside the drawing-room. "The lies are like ripples on a pond. They spread outward, but their source is always a single stone. Today, we shall find that stone." Their first task was to revisit the library, where the ancient journal about the Blackthorn compass had hinted at a fortune tied to its possession. Poirot, with his meticulous care, sifted through the shelves once more, his fingers pausing on a series of ledgers marked with the Blackthorn family crest. "These," he said, pulling one down, "are the financial records of the estate. If Mr. Carver was investigating irregularities, as Lady Eleanor suggested, we may find a motive here." The ledgers, yellowed and brittle, detailed decades of transactions, land sales, investments, and debts. One entry, dated only a month prior, caught Poirot's eye. A substantial withdrawal from the estate's accounts, authorized by Lady Eleanor but annotated in Carver's precise hand. The note read, "Pending verification of asset, B.C." Hastings, peering over Poirot's shoulder, frowned. "B.C. The Blackthorn compass. Was Carver looking into its value?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Précisément, Hastings. The compass is more than an heirloom. It is a symbol of wealth, perhaps even a key to—"
Over spilled tea tray, her face ashen. Lionel Blackthorn hovered nearby, his expression a mix of concern and irritation, while Miss Clara Henshaw knelt to gather the shattered porcelain. Dr. Rupert Vance, seated by the fire, looked up from his newspaper, his spectacles glinting in the dim light. "Forgive me," Lady Eleanor said, her voice trembling. I was startled, a shadow at the window. It was nothing, I'm sure." Poirot's gaze sharpened, his eyes darting to the window where the rain-smeared glass revealed no trace of an intruder. "Madame," he said gently, "your nerves are understandable. But tell me, this shadow, what did it resemble?" Lady Eleanor hesitated, her hands twisting her handkerchief. "It was vague, a figure perhaps. I thought it might be someone watching us." Lionel snorted, lighting a cigarette. "Aunt Eleanor, you're seeing ghosts. It's just the storm playing tricks." Poirot's smile was polite but unyielding. "Monsieur Blackthorn, the mind does not invent what it fears without reason. Let us be vigilant." He turned to Clara, who was carefully stacking the broken china. "Miss Henshaw, you were quick to assist. Did you see this shadow?" Clara's eyes flickered, her voice cool. "No, Mr. Poirot. I was focused on the tray. I saw nothing." Poirot nodded, filing her response away. As the group dispersed, he drew Hastings aside. "The shadow, Hastings. It is another distraction, perhaps, but Lady Eleanor's fear is real. She knows more than she admits, and her nephew's dismissal is too quick, too practiced." Their next encounter came unexpectedly, as Dr. Vance approached them in the hall, his face flushed with agitation. "Mr. Poirot," he said, his voice low, "I must speak with you privately. It's about something I overheard." Poirot raised an eyebrow, gesturing for Vance to continue. The doctor glanced nervously over his shoulder before speaking. "Last night, before the scream, I heard voices in the corridor near Carver's room. It was around 10:30. I couldn't make out the words, but one voice was Carver's and the other, it sounded like Lionel." Hastings' eyes widened. "Lionel, but he said he was in the billiard room." Poirot's expression remained impassive. "Merci, doctor. This is most illuminating. But why did you not mention this to Inspector Grayson?" Vance mopped his brow, his spectacles slipping. "I didn't want to cause trouble. Lionel's a good lad, but he's troubled. I thought it best to tell you first." Poirot dismissed Vance with a nod, turning to Hastings. "The doctor's confession is convenient, no? He points the finger at Lionel, yet his own alibi is shaky." The voices, the shadow, these are the lies that surface, Hastings. They are meant to distract, but they also reveal. Determined to test Vance's claim, Poirot led Hastings to the corridor outside Carver's room. The guest wing with its thick walls muffling the sound of the storm outside. Poirot paced the length of the corridor, his eyes scanning the floor and walls. Near the door to Carver's room, he paused, crouching to examine a faint scuff mark on the baseboard. Voila, he murmured, pointing to the mark. A shoe, perhaps, brushing against the wood. It is recent, Hastings, and it is not the mark of a man's boot. The curve is too delicate, too feminine. Hastings frowned. A woman's shoe? You think Clara or Lady Eleanor was here? Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Or someone who wishes us to think so. The mark is too perfect, too visible. Another thread in the web.
Chapter 9. The trap is set. The rain had ceased, leaving Blackthorn Hall enveloped in a damp silence, the air heavy with the scent of wet stone and salt. The emotional outburst in the drawing room had cracked the facade of the household, and Lady Eleanor's revelation about the hidden vault tied to the Blackthorn compass had shifted the mystery into sharper focus. Hercule Poirot, his little gray cells humming with purpose, sensed that the time had come to tighten the net around the guilty party. Captain Hastings, still reeling from Clara Henshaw's dropped notebook and its damning sketch, followed Poirot with a mixture of anticipation and unease, certain that the detective was preparing to spring a trap. Poirot, standing in the library with the ancient journal of the Blackthorn compass open before him, was a study in concentration. The faint light filtering through the rain-streaked windows cast shadows across his immaculate features, and his fingers traced the faded script as though it held the final piece of the puzzle. "Mon ami," he said to Hastings, his voice low but vibrant with conviction. "The compass is the key, not only to a vault, but to the motives that drive this crime. Lady Eleanor's confession has stirred the waters, and now we must watch the ripples. Tonight, we shall gather the household and apply the pressure that will force the truth to surface." Hastings, his notebook open, frowned. "You mean to confront them all, Poirot? But Clara's sketch, surely she's involved, and Lionel's lies about the billiard room, Vance's vial, Lady Eleanor's secret vault. It's a tangle. How do you know where to begin?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic, his eyes gleaming with the thrill of the chase. "Précisément, Hastings. The tangle is deliberate, a web spun to confuse. But every web has a center, and every center a spider. The sketch, the lies, the vial, they are threads, and tonight we shall pull them taut." Poirot's plan was to assemble the household in the drawing room after dinner, under the pretense of discussing the progress of the investigation. He instructed Withers to ensure that every member of the household, Lady Eleanor, Lionel Blackthorn, Clara Henshaw, and Dr. Rupert Vance, was present, along with Inspector Grayson, whose skepticism Poirot intended to use to his advantage. "The inspector," Poirot confided to Hastings, "believes in his outsider theory, but he will serve as our foil. His doubts will unsettle the guilty, and in their unease, they will betray themselves." As evening fell, the drawing room was prepared, its heavy curtains drawn against the darkening sky. The fire crackled. Absent for the first time, sat with her hands folded, her expression a mask of defiance. Dr. Vance, his spectacles polished to a gleam, fidgeted with his medical bag,
while Inspector Grayson stood by the door, his arms crossed and his face set in a scowl. Poirot, standing at the center of the room, exuded an air of calm authority, his small figure commanding the attention of all. "Messieurs et mesdames," he began, his voice clear and deliberate. "We stand at a crossroads in this affair. The theft of the Blackthorn compass and the murder of Mr. Gerald Carver are not separate crimes, but two acts in a single drama. Tonight, I propose to lay bare the truth, and I ask for your cooperation. Let us begin with the compass." He paced slowly, his eyes sweeping the room. "The compass, we now know, is more than an heirloom. It is a key to a hidden vault, a secret that Mr. Carver was investigating. His letter, interrupted by his death, warned of a grave danger tied to this vault. But what danger? And who stood to lose if it was uncovered?" Lady Eleanor's voice trembled as she spoke. "Mr. Poirot, I told you, the vault was a family legend. I asked Mr. Carver to verify it, to save the estate. I had no idea it would lead to this." Poirot inclined his head, his gaze gentle but unyielding. "Oui, madame, and your candor has been most illuminating. But let us consider the facts. The compass was stolen at 11 o'clock, as evidenced by your scream and the shattered cabinet. Yet the glass was broken from the inside, suggesting the theft was staged to appear violent. Why?" Lionel shifted uncomfortably, his voice sharp. "You're saying someone in this room took it? That's absurd. Why would any of us steal our own family's compass?" Poirot's smile was faint. "A question I have asked myself, Monsieur Blackthorn. Perhaps to hide its true value, or to prevent Mr. Carver from uncovering the vault. Let us turn to the murder. Mr. Carver was stabbed with a letter opener, wiped clean of fingerprints between midnight and 2. Yet the timetable found in his room, written in blue ink, suggests a precise accounting of the evening's events. Who wrote it and why?" Clara's eyes flashed, but she remained silent. Poirot continued, his voice growing sharper. "Miss Henshaw, your notebook contains a sketch of the compass, drawn in blue ink. You claim it is private, yet it suggests a keen interest in the very object at the heart of this crime. Will you not share what you know?" Clara's composure wavered, her hands clenching. "I told you, Mr. Poirot, my notebook is personal. The sketch was a curiosity. I've done nothing wrong."
"What? Share this?" Vance's face reddened, his voice rising. "I was trying to help. I didn't want to accuse Lionel without proof. The vial is a sedative, nothing more." Poirot raised a hand, silencing the room.
"Messieurs et mesdames, the truth is near. The timetable, the sketch, the vial, the mud on the carpet, these are not accidents, but pieces of a carefully constructed deception. I propose a test. Let us assume the compass is still within this house. If it is found, it will point us to the murderer." A murmur of shock rippled through the room. Inspector Grayson scoffed. "Still in the house? Preposterous! We've searched every inch." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Not every inch, Inspector. The mind of the criminal is subtle, but not infallible. I suggest we search again, together, under my direction. If the compass is found, it will reveal its keeper." The tension in the room was palpable, each suspect exchanging wary glances. Poirot's trap was set, his words a spark in a powder keg. As the group rose to begin the search, Hastings whispered, "Poirot, do you really think the compass is here? Or is this a bluff?" Poirot's smile was cryptic. "Mon ami, the trap is not in the search, but in the fear it provokes. The guilty one will act, and in acting, they will betray themselves." As the household dispersed to search the manor, the shadows of Blackthorn Hall seemed to pulse with anticipation. Poirot's trap was closing, and the truth, so long obscured, was about to be caught in its jaws. Chapter 10. The Reveal. The air in Blackthorn Hall was thick with tension as the household, under Hercule Poirot's direction, embarked on the search for the missing Blackthorn compass. The storm had passed, leaving a brittle silence that amplified every creak of the manor's ancient floors. Captain Hastings, his heart pounding with anticipation, followed Poirot's lead, sensing that the detective's trap was about to spring. The suspects, Lady Eleanor, Lionel Blackthorn, Clara Henshaw, and Dr. Rupert Vance, moved through the rooms with a mixture of reluctance and fear, their every glance betraying the weight of secrets long held. Inspector Grayson, skeptical but intrigued, trailed the group, his notebook at the ready. Poirot had orchestrated the search with meticulous care, directing each member of the household to a specific area of the manor. "Monsieur et Mesdames," he had said, his voice calm but commanding, "we shall search methodically, leaving no corner unexplored. The compass is the key, and its discovery will illuminate the truth behind Mr. Carver's death." His words, delivered with theatrical precision, had set the stage for the final act, and Hastings could see movements jerky and distracted. Lionel, assigned to the shelves near the window, tossed volumes aside with barely concealed frustration. Clara, tasked with examining the desk, handled each item with exaggerated care, her face pale. Dr. Vance, searching the lower shelves, muttered to himself, his spectacles slipping down his nose. As the search progressed, Poirot's attention was drawn to a small locked cabinet in the corner of the room, its brass fittings tarnished but intact. "Mon cher Withers," he called to the butler, who hovered nearby, "this cabinet, has it been searched?" Withers shook his head. "No, sir, it's kept locked. Lady Eleanor has the only key." Lady Eleanor, her hands trembling, produced a small key from her pocket. "It's just old family papers," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Nothing of importance." Poirot's smile was polite, but unrelenting. "Madame, in a matter of murder, nothing is unimportant. If you please." With a reluctant nod, Lady Eleanor unlocked the cabinet, revealing a collection of dusty documents and a small, velvet-lined box. Poirot's eyes gleamed as he opened the box, revealing the Blackthorn compass, its brass surface glinting in the dim light. A collective gasp filled the room, and Hastings' jaw dropped. "Good heavens, Poirot, it was here all along?" Poirot held up a hand, silencing the murmurs. "Oui, Hastings. The compass was never stolen. It was hidden, here in this cabinet, to create the illusion of a theft. But let us now unravel the truth." He turned to the assembled group, his voice rising with the cadence of a maestro conducting a symphony. "The disappearance of the Blackthorn compass was a ruse, a carefully staged distraction to mask the true crime, the murder of Mr. Gerald Carver. Let me explain, step by step, how the little grey cells of Hercule Poirot have pieced together this puzzle." He paced slowly, his eyes sweeping over the suspects. First, the theft. The cabinet's glass was shattered from the inside, suggesting it was broken deliberately to suggest a violent act. The scream at 11 o'clock, heard by all, was Lady Eleanor's, but it was not spontaneous. It was part of a plan to draw attention to the stolen compass, diverting suspicion from the murder that would follow. Lady Eleanor's face paled, but she remained silent. Poirot continued. "Mr. Carver was killed between midnight and 2, stabbed with a letter opener wiped clean of fingerprints. The mud on the carpet, the open window,
These were staged to suggest an intruder, but the mud was red clay, found only on the cliffs, and its placement was too deliberate, too delicate. No intruder climbed through that window. The white. Miss Henshaw, your notebook has been a source of fascination. The sketch of the compass, drawn in blue ink, matches the ink of the timetable found in Mr. Carver's room. That timetable, so precise, was meant to establish alibis, but it betrayed you. The smudge of ink, the feminine handwriting, it was yours. Clara's eyes widened, her voice rising in panic.
No, I didn't kill him. I only wrote the timetable to keep track of the evening, for Lady Eleanor.
Poirot raised a hand, his tone unrelenting. Oui, for Lady Eleanor, but not out of loyalty. You knew of the hidden vault, did you not? You overheard Mr. Carver's conversations with Lady Eleanor about the compass and its connection to the Blackthorn fortune. You saw an opportunity, not for wealth, but for power. You have long served Lady Eleanor, but your devotion was tinged with resentment, no? You wished to control the secret of the vault, to hold sway over the family. Clara's composure shattered, tears streaming down her face.
I didn't kill him. I only wanted to protect the secret, to keep it from Lionel, from anyone who would ruin the estate.
Poirot turned to Lionel, whose face was flushed with anger. And you, Monsieur Blackthorn, your lies about the billiard room were clumsy. You were not there, but in the corridor near Mr. Carver's room, arguing with him. Dr. Vance overheard you, though he hesitated to say so. You knew of the vault too, and feared Mr. Carver's investigation would expose your debts and disgrace you. Lionel leapt to his feet, his voice shaking. That's a lie! I argued with Carver, yes, about money, but I didn't kill him. Poirot's eyes gleamed. No, you did not. But your argument provided the opportunity for the true killer. He turned to Dr. Vance, whose spectacles slipped as he shrank back. Doctor, your vial of sedative, so conveniently found by Inspector Grayson, was a distraction. But your true mistake was the mud on your shoes, red clay, matching that in Mr. Carver's room. You were not on the terrace at 11, but in the guest wing, waiting for your moment. Vance's face crumpled, his voice a hoarse whisper. No, you're wrong. Poirot's voice rose, commanding the room. You, Dr. Vance, are the murderer. You knew of the vault from your long service to the family. You feared Mr. Carver's discovery would ruin you, for you had been siphoning funds from the estate, hiding your theft in the ledgers. When Carver grew suspicious, you staged the theft of the compass to create chaos, then killed him to silence him. The mud.
Eleanor buried her face in her hands. Clara, still weeping, sank to her knees, and Lionel stood frozen, his anger replaced by shock. Hastings, his heart racing, turned to Poirot. Good Lord, Poirot, you've done it again. But how did you know? Poirot's smile was modest but triumphant. The little grey cells, Hastings, they see what others miss, the contradictions, the details, the human heart. The compass was never the prize, but the motive, and now the truth is clear. As Vance was led away, the room fell silent, the weight of the revelation settling over Blackthorn Hall. The compass, returned to its rightful place, gleamed in the firelight, its secrets laid bare. For Poirot, the puzzle was solved, but the echoes of the crime would linger long after he departed. Chapter 11. The Reflection. The revelation of Dr. Rupert Vance as the murderer of Gerald Carver and the orchestrator of the Blackthorn Compass's staged theft had left Blackthorn Hall in a state of stunned silence. The rain had ceased, and a pale moon now cast its light through the manor's windows, illuminating the drawing room where the household remained gathered, their faces etched with shock, relief, and lingering guilt. Hercule Poirot, his small figure radiating quiet triumph, stood by the fireplace, the blackthorn compass resting on the mantel, a gleaming symbol of the truth he had uncovered. Captain Hastings, still reeling from the dramatic unmasking, watched his friend with admiration, knowing that this moment of reflection was as much a part of Poirot's method as the investigation itself. Inspector Grayson, his skepticism replaced by grudging respect, had taken Dr. Vance into custody, the doctor's tearful confession echoing as he was led away. The household, Lady Eleanor, Lionel Blackthorne, and Clara Henshaw, sat in a semicircle, their eyes fixed on Poirot, who seemed to command the room with an effortless authority. Withers, the butler, stood discreetly by the door, his impassive demeanour softened by a hint of awe. "Messieurs et mesdames," Poirot began, his voice low but resonant, "the affair of the Blackthorn compass is concluded, but the truth, it leaves its mark, n'est-ce pas? The murder of Mr. Gerald Carver was not a crime of passion, but of desperation, driven by the fear of exposure. Dr. Vance, entrusted with the health of this family, betrayed its trust, siphoning funds from the estate to cover his own debts. When Mr. Carver's investigation into the compass and its hidden vault threatened to reveal his crimes, Vance acted with cunning, staging a theft to create chaos and silencing Carver with a letter opener. Lady Eleanor, her hands clasped tightly, spoke in a trembling voice. "Mr. Poirot, I trusted Dr. Vance. How could I have been so blind?" Poirot's eyes softened, but his tone remained firm. "Madame, the heart trusts where the mind must question."
You could not foresee the greed that lurked in another's heart. It is not your failing, but the human condition. Lionel, his bravado shattered, leaned forward, his voice hoarse. "And me, Poirot? You suspected me, didn't you? Because of my debts? My lies about the billiard room?" Poirot's moustache twitched with a faint smile. "Oui, Monsieur Blackthorne. Your lies were clumsy. Your motives apparent. Your debts gave you reason to desire the vault's wealth, and your arguments with Mr. Carver placed you near the scene of the crime. But the little grey cells, they see beyond the obvious. Your guilt was one of shame, not murder." Clara Henshaw, her notebook now open on her lap, looked up, her eyes red from tears. "And my notebook, Mr. Poirot? You accuse me of hiding secrets, of drawing the compass. Was I truly so close to being blamed?" Poirot's gaze was gentle but unyielding. "Mademoiselle, your notebook was a mirror of your loyalty and your fear. You sketched the compass, not out of greed, but to protect Lady Eleanor's secret. Your timetable, written in blue ink, was meant to order the chaos of that night, but it betrayed your knowledge of the vault. You did not kill, but you concealed, and in concealment, you invited suspicion." Hastings, unable to contain himself, leaned forward. "Poirot, it's extraordinary. The mud, the timetable, the scuff mark. How did you piece it all together? And the compass, hidden in the cabinet all along?" Poirot turned to his friend, his expression one of modest pride. "Mon ami, the truth is like a mosaic. Each piece, no matter how small, has its place. The mud was too deliberate, the glass shattered from the inside, the timetable written in haste. Dr. Vance's boots left the scuff mark, his vial a distraction, his overheard voices a half-truth to shift blame. The compass, never stolen, was the spark that ignited the crime. But it was the human heart, greed, fear, desperation that fueled it." Inspector Grayson, clearing his throat, stepped forward. "Mr. Poirot, I'll admit I doubted you. Thought you were chasing shadows with all your talk of psychology and details. But you've done it. Solved the case that had me stumped."
Poirot bowed slightly, his smile gracious. Merci, Inspector, but Hercule Poirot does not chase shadows. He illuminates them. The truth is always there, waiting for the mind that dares to see it. As the household began to disperse, Lady Eleanor approached Poirot, her eyes filled with gratitude. Mr. Poirot, you have saved us from ruin, not just the estate, but our souls. The compass, it will remain with us, a reminder of what we nearly against the rocks, and the air was cool and clean. Poirot, Hastings said, his voice tinged with awe. You always say it's the little grey cells, but it's more than that. You see people, don't you? Their fears, their hopes, their lies. Poirot's eyes twinkled in the moonlight. Oui, Hastings. The mind solves the puzzle, but the heart understands the player. To solve a crime, one must know both the act and the actor. The compass was the stage, but the drama was human. With a final glance at the manor, Poirot turned toward the path leading to the village, where a car awaited to take them back to London. Come, mon ami, he said, his voice light but resolute. The case is closed, and Blackthorn Hall must heal. For Hercule Poirot, there are always more puzzles, more truths to uncover. As they walked away, the manor loomed behind them, its windows aglow with the soft light of candles. The Blackthorn compass, restored to its place, gleamed silently, its secrets no longer a burden, but a legacy. For Poirot, the reflection was complete, and the game, for now, was over. Chapter 12. The Echoes of Truth. The morning following Dr. Rupert Vance's confession dawned clear and crisp. The Devonshire cliffs bathed in a golden light that belied the darkness that had gripped Blackthorn Hall. The revelation of the murderer and the recovery of the Blackthorn compass had lifted a weight from the household, yet an undercurrent of unease lingered, as though the manor's ancient stones still held secrets not fully laid bare. Hercule Poirot, ever attuned to the subtleties of human nature, sensed that the case, though resolved, had left echoes, ripples of truth that demanded one final examination. Captain Hastings, his mind still reeling from the dramatic unmasking, followed Poirot with a mixture of relief and curiosity, eager to see how the detective would tie up the remaining threads. Poirot had requested a final meeting with the household in the library, where the air was thick with the scent of old leather and polished wood. The Blackthorn compass, now restored to its velvet-lined box, sat on a table at the room's center, its brass surface catching the morning light. Lady Eleanor, Lionel Blackthorn, and Clara Henshaw were present, their faces marked by a complex blend of gratitude and exhaustion. Inspector Grayson, preparing to depart for the village with his report, lingered at the edge of the room, his respect for Poirot now evident in his softened demeanor. Messieurs et mesdames, Poirot began, his voice clear and measured. The affair of the Blackthorn compass is concluded, yet there are—
Mr. Poirot, you have saved us from ruin, but I cannot help feeling responsible. If I had not asked Mr. Carver to investigate the vault, he might still be alive. Poirot's gaze was gentle, his tone reassuring. Madame, the fault lies not with you, but with the one who chose to kill. Your desire to save your estate was noble, though it stirred the greed in another's heart. The compass, with its promise of a hidden vault, was a temptation too great for Dr. Vance to resist. Lionel, leaning against a bookshelf, his usual bravado subdued, cleared his throat. Poirot, I owe you an apology. I lied about the billiard room, and I argued with Carver that night. I was desperate, drowning in debts, but I swear I never meant him harm. Poirot nodded, his moustache twitching with a faint smile. Monsieur Blackthorn,
Your lies were those of a man ashamed, not a murderer. Your argument with Mr. Carver provided the opportunity for Dr. Vance, but it was not the cause. You must learn, mon ami, to face your faults with courage, not deception. Clara Henshaw, her notebook now resting openly on her lap, spoke softly, her voice tinged with regret. Mr. Poirot, my sketch of the compass. I only wanted to protect Lady Eleanor. I knew the vault was real from overhearing her talks with Carver. I thought if I documented it, I could help her secure it, but I was wrong to hide it. Poirot's eyes gleamed with understanding. Mademoiselle, your loyalty is commendable, but secrets, they breed suspicion. Your timetable, your sketch, they were threads in the web, but they also helped me see the truth. You have served your mistress well, but trust must now replace secrecy. Hastings, standing near the window, could not resist interjecting. Poirot, it's remarkable how you saw through it all. The mud, the timetable, the scuff mark. But what about the vault? Does it really exist, or was it just a legend that drove Vance to kill? Poirot turned to the compass, lifting it gently from its box. The vault, Hastings, is no mere legend. The journal we found speaks of it, and Mr. Carver's notes confirm he was close to locating it. Lady Eleanor, with your permission, I suggest a final act to lay this matter to rest. Let us seek the vault, not for its wealth, but to ensure no further secrets haunt this house. Lady Eleanor's eyes widened, but she nodded. Yes, Mr. Poirot, if it exists, let us find it. I want no more shadows over Blackthorn Hall. Guided by the journal's cryptic clues, Poirot led the group to the cellar, a damp, cavernous space beneath the manor, its walls lined with ancient stone. The journal had mentioned a guardian of the sea, a phrase Poirot interpreted as a reference to a carving of a ship near the cellar's far wall. With Lionel's help, they located the carving, its weathered lines barely visible in the flickering light of a lantern.
Journal. And with a low groan, a section of the wall slid aside, revealing a narrow chamber. Inside was a small iron-bound chest, its surface etched with a blackthorn crest. Lady Eleanor, her hands trembling, opened it to reveal a collection of documents, deeds, bonds, and a small cache of gold coins. "The vault," she whispered, her voice filled with awe. "It's real." Poirot's smile was modest. "Oui, madame. The compass was the key, its markings guiding the way to this chamber. Mr. Carver's investigation threatened to expose it, and Dr. Vance, fearing the loss of his ill-gotten gains, killed to protect his secret. But now, the truth is yours to guard." Inspector Grayson, peering into the chamber, shook his head in amazement. "Mr. Poirot, you've turned a theft and a murder into a treasure hunt. I'll be sure to mention your work in my report." Poirot bowed slightly, his expression one of quiet satisfaction. "Merci, Inspector, but the true treasure is justice, and that has been served." As the group returned to the library, the compass was placed back in its cabinet, its glass now repaired. Lady Eleanor, Lionel, and Clara stood together, their faces reflecting a newfound resolve to move forward. Poirot, observing them, turned to Hastings. "Mon ami, the echoes of truth have a way of healing. This house, it will stand stronger for it." As they prepared to depart, Hastings couldn't help but marvel. "Poirot, you've done it again. You took a tangle of lies and found not just a murderer, but a treasure. How do you always see what we miss?" Poirot's eyes twinkled in the morning light. "The little grey cells, Hastings, they see the pattern where others see chaos. But it is the heart that understands why the pattern exists. Come, we have a train to catch." With a final nod to the household, Poirot and Hastings stepped out into the crisp air, the cliffs stretching before them. Blackthorn Hall, its secrets laid bare, stood silent behind them, ready to begin anew. For Poirot, the case was closed, but the echoes of truth would resonate long after he was gone. Chapter 13. The Weight of Legacy.
The discovery of the hidden vault beneath Blackthorn Hall had brought a fleeting sense of resolution to the household, but as the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the Devonshire cliffs, a subtle unease lingered. The Blackthorn compass, now safely restored to its place in the repaired cabinet, gleamed as a symbol of both triumph and burden. Hercule Poirot, ever sensitive to the undercurrents of human emotion, sensed that the case, though solved, had left questions unanswered, questions not of guilt, but of the legacy that had driven the tragedy. Captain Hastings, his mind still buzzing with the thrill of the vault's discovery, followed Poirot as they prepared to take their leave, yet he could not shake the feeling that the detective had one final act to perform. The household room. A space that had witnessed so much of the drama unfold, Lady Eleanor Blackthorn sat by the fire, her posture regal but her eyes heavy with the weight of recent events. Lionel Blackthorn, his usual restlessness subdued, stood near the window gazing out at the sea. Clara Henshaw, a notebook now a shared artifact rather than a guarded secret, sat quietly, her expression one of quiet resolve. Inspector Grayson had departed for the village to finalize his report, leaving the manor in a state of fragile calm. Poirot, standing at the center of the room, clasped his hands behind his back, his immaculate figure a beacon of order amidst the emotional turbulence. "Monsieur et Mesdames," he began, his voice soft yet resonant. "The affair of the Blackthorn compass has been resolved, and justice has been served. Dr. Rupert Vance, driven by greed and fear, took the life of Mr. Gerald Carver to protect his secrets. The compass, with its promise of a hidden vault, was the spark that ignited this tragedy. But now, we must consider the legacy it leaves behind, not only for this house, but for each of you." Lady Eleanor's voice trembled as she spoke. "Mr. Poirot, you've given us back our peace, but it's such a cost. The vault, the compass, they were meant to save us, yet they brought death. How do we move forward?" Poirot's eyes softened, his tone one of profound empathy. "Madame, the compass is a symbol of your family's strength, but also its burdens. The vault, with its deeds and treasures, offers a chance to rebuild, but only if you face the truth of your legacy. The Blackthorn name has endured storms and secrets, yet it endures still. You must decide whether to let the past define you or to forge a new path." Lionel turned from the window, his face etched with a rare vulnerability. "Poirot, I've been a fool. My debts, my lies, they nearly destroyed us. I thought the vault could fix everything. But now, I see it's not about the money. It's about trust." Poirot nodded, his mustache twitching with approval. "Oui, Monsieur Blackthorn. Trust is the foundation of any family, and it is earned through honesty. Your debts are a burden, but they are not your destiny. Begin anew, and prove yourself worthy of the name you bear." Clara, her hands folded over her notebook, spoke softly. "Mr. Poirot, I hid the truth about the compass because I thought it was my duty to protect Lady Eleanor, but my silence only caused pain. What can I do to make amends?" Poirot's gaze was gentle but firm. "Mademoiselle Henshaw, your loyalty is your strength, but it must be tempered with openness. The notebook you guarded so fiercely was a mirror of your devotion, but also your fear. Share your truths, and you will find that trust... You've not only solved the crime, but given them a way forward. It's more than just catching a killer. It's about healing." Poirot's smile was modest, his eyes gleaming with quiet satisfaction. "Mon ami, a crime is a wound, and its resolution must bring healing as well as justice. The little grey cells solve the puzzle, but it is the heart that mends the broken." As the conversation drew to a close, Lady Eleanor rose, approaching Poirot with a small velvet-lined box, the same box that had held the compass during its brief concealment. "Mr. Poirot," she said, her voice steady, "I want you to take the compass. Not as a reward, but as a reminder of what you've done for us. Its legacy is yours to carry, if you'll accept it." Poirot's eyes widened, a rare flicker of surprise crossing his features. "Madame, your gesture is most generous. But the compass belongs here, with your family. Its secrets are no longer a curse, but a promise of renewal, of strength. Keep it, and let it guide you to a brighter future." Lady Eleanor nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "Thank you, Mr. Poirot, for everything." As the household began to disperse, Poirot and Hastings prepared to depart, their bags already packed for the journey back to London. Outside, the cliffs stretched towards the horizon, the sea calm and shimmering under the afternoon sun. Hastings, pausing on the terrace, turned to Poirot. "It's a strange thing, Poirot. The compass caused so much pain, yet it's also brought them together. Do you think they'll be all right?" Poirot gazed out at the sea, his expression contemplative. "Mon ami, the human heart is resilient. The blackthorns have faced their shadows and emerged stronger. The compass, once a source of greed, is now a beacon of hope. They will endure, as all families must, by confronting their truths." With a final glance at Blackthorn Hall, Poirot led the way to the waiting car, his step light but purposeful. The case was closed, the vault uncovered, and the legacy of the Blackthorn compass redefined. For Hercule Poirot, the echoes of truth had been heard, and the manor, though scarred, was ready to heal. As the car wound down the cliffside road, the detective's mind was already turning to the next puzzle, the next truth, waiting to be unveiled. Chapter 14. The Final Threads. The sun was dipping low over the Devonshire cliffs, casting a warm, golden glow across Blackthorn Hall as Hercule Poirot and Captain Hastings prepared to depart. The resolution of Gerald Carver's murder and the recovery of the Blackthorn compass had brought a fragile peace to the household, but
Companion followed with a mix of admiration and curiosity, sensing that the detective's final reflections would bring clarity to the complex drama they had unraveled. The household had gathered one last time in the drawing room, a space that had borne witness to accusations, confessions, and revelations. Lady Eleanor Blackthorn sat by the fire, her hands steady now, though her eyes still carried the shadow of recent events. Lionel Blackthorn, his usual restlessness replaced by a quiet determination, stood near her, his gaze fixed on the compass which gleamed in its repaired cabinet. Clara Henshaw, her notebook open but no longer a shield, sat with a newfound openness, her expression one of resolve. Withers, the butler, stood discreetly by the door, his presence a silent testament to the manor's enduring order. Poirot, standing at the center of the room, his small figure radiating authority, clasped his hands behind his back. "Messieurs et mesdames," he began, his voice clear and resonant, "the affair of the Blackthorn compass is at its end. Yet there are final threads to be tied, final truths to be acknowledged. The murder of Mr. Gerald Carver was a crime of greed, but it was also a crime of opportunity, born from the secrets each of you carried. Before Hercule Poirot departs, I wish to ensure that these secrets no longer cast their shadows." Lady Eleanor, her voice soft but firm, spoke first. "Mr. Poirot, you have given us more than justice. You have given us a chance to begin again. But I must know, was there anything more we could have done to prevent this tragedy?" Poirot's eyes softened, his tone one of gentle reassurance. "Madame, the heart cannot foresee the actions of another. You trusted Dr. Vance as you trusted Mr. Carver, because it is your nature to see the good in those around you. The fault lies with the one who betrayed that trust. Your task now is to rebuild, to let the compass guide you not to wealth, but to unity." Lionel stepped forward, his face etched with a rare sincerity. "Poirot, I've been a fool, chasing quick fixes for my mistakes. But finding the vault has shown me what really matters. I want to make things right, for Aunt Eleanor, for the family. Is there a way forward?" Poirot's moustache twitched with approval. "Monsieur Blackthorne, the way forward is paved with honesty. Your debts are a burden, but they are not your destiny. Use the resources of the vault wisely, not for personal gain, but to restore the estate. Prove your worth through actions."
Notebook, once a fortress, can now be a bridge. Use it to share, to communicate, to build trust. Your place here is secure if you choose to embrace it fully. Hastings, standing near the window, couldn't help but interject. "Poirot, you've not only solved the crime, but given them a blueprint for the future. The compass, the vault, the lies, it's all so intricate. How do you always see the whole picture?" Poirot turned to his friend, his eyes twinkling with quiet pride. "Mon ami, the picture is never whole until every piece is in place. The mud on the carpet, the timetable's blue ink, the scuff mark in the corridor. These were the threads, but the pattern was human. Greed, fear, loyalty, shame, they are the colors of the soul, and Hercule Poirot sees them all." Before departing, Poirot requested a final inspection of the vault, accompanied by Lady Eleanor and Lionel. The cellar chamber, now illuminated by lanterns, felt less like a crypt and more like a promise. The iron-bound chest, its contents carefully catalogued, held deeds to lands long forgotten and bonds that could secure the estate's future. Poirot, examining the documents, pointed to a small sealed envelope tucked among them, marked with the Blackthorn crest. "Madame," he said, handing it to Lady Eleanor, "this may hold a final message from your ancestors. Open it with care." Lady Eleanor, her hand steady, broke the seal. Inside was a letter, written in the same spidery hand as the journal, dated over a century ago. It read, "To the heirs of Blackthorn, the compass guides not to gold, but to honor. Guard it, not for its wealth, but for the unity it represents. Let no greed divide you." Lady Eleanor's eyes filled with tears as she read the words aloud. "It's as if they knew," she whispered. "This is the true legacy of the compass." Poirot nodded, his expression one of quiet satisfaction. "Oui, madame. The compass is a symbol, but its power lies in what it inspires. Let it guide you to a future unburdened by secrets." As they returned to the drawing room, Poirot gathered his coat and hat, preparing to depart. Withers, with a rare show of emotion, bowed deeply. "Mr. Poirot, you have our gratitude. Blackthorn Hall is forever in your debt." Poirot waved a hand, his smile modest. "No, Withers, the debt is paid in truth. Guard it well." Outside, the cliffs stretched toward the horizon, the sea a shimmering expanse under the fading light. Hastings, walking beside Poirot to the waiting car, felt a sense of completion. "Poirot, you've turned a tragedy into a triumph. The Blackthorns have a future now, thanks to you." Poirot's eyes gleamed as he gazed at the manor one last time. "Mon ami, the future is built on the truths we uncover." The compass' final threads of the mystery had been woven. And for Hercule Poirot, the case was a testament to the power of truth to heal even the deepest wounds. Chapter 15. The Departure.
The sun had set over the Devonshire cliffs, leaving Blackthorn Hall bathed in the soft twilight that seemed to signal the end of a long and harrowing chapter. The resolution of Gerald Carver's murder, the recovery of the Blackthorn compass, and the discovery of the hidden vault had brought a semblance of peace to the household. Yet the air still carried the faint echo of secrets unveiled. Hercule Poirot, his work complete, stood on the terrace, his immaculate figure silhouetted against the fading light, preparing to take his leave. Captain Hastings, ever his steadfast companion, stood beside him, reflecting on the intricate puzzle they had unraveled and the lives they had touched. The household had gathered one final time in the hall to bid farewell to the detective who had restored their future. Lady Eleanor Blackthorn, her mourning attire softened by a newfound resolve, clasped Poirot's hand with gratitude. Lionel Blackthorn, his reckless demeanour tempered by the weight of responsibility, stood tall beside her, a silent promise of reform in his eyes. Clara Henshaw, her notebook now a shared record of the estate's history, offered a tentative smile, her guarded nature giving way to openness. Withers, the butler, stood at attention, his gaunt face softened by a rare warmth. "Messieurs et mesdames," Poirot said, his voice clear and resonant in the quiet hall. "The affair of the Blackthorn compass has reached its conclusion. The truth, once hidden, now shines like the stars above these cliffs. Dr. Rupert Vance's crime was a shadow cast by greed, but you have chosen to step into the light. The compass, with its legacy of honor, will guide you if you let it." Lady Eleanor's voice was steady, though her eyes glistened with emotion. "Mr. Poirot, you have given us more than justice. You have given us hope, a chance to rebuild what was nearly lost. We shall never forget you." Poirot bowed slightly, his moustache twitching with a modest smile. "Madame, it is the work of Hercule Poirot to uncover truth, but it is your work to build upon it. The vault, with its deeds and treasures, is a foundation, but the true strength of Blackthorn Hall lies in your unity." Lionel stepped forward, his voice earnest. "Poirot, I was a fool to think money could fix my mistakes. You've shown me there's a better way. I'll make the estate proud, I swear it." Poirot's eyes gleamed with approval. "Monsieur Blackthorn, the path to redemption is paved with action, not promises. Use the compass's legacy wisely, and you will find your place." Clara, clutching her notebook, "Mademoiselle Henshaw, your heart is true. Let your notebook now be a chronicle of hope, not fear." Hastings, standing by the door, felt a swell of pride for his friend's ability to not only solve a crime, but to mend a fractured family. "Poirot," he said, his voice low, "you've turned a tragedy into a triumph. The compass was a curse, but you've made it a blessing." Poirot turned to Hastings, his green-grey eyes twinkling in the twilight. "Mon ami, a curse is only a truth misunderstood. The little grey cells see the pattern, but it is the heart that finds the meaning. The Blackthorns have faced their shadows, and now they are free to shine." With a final bow to the household, Poirot led the way to the waiting car, its engine humming softly in the cool evening air. The cliffs stretched out before them, the sea a dark expanse beneath a sky studded with stars. As they settled into the car, Hastings glanced back at Blackthorn Hall, its windows aglow with the promise of renewal. "It's a strange thing, Poirot," he said, his voice thoughtful. "You solve the crime, but you also solve the people. How do you do it?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic, his hands folded neatly in his lap. "Mon ami, a crime is but a symptom of the human condition. To solve it, one must understand the heart, its fears, its desires, its secrets. The compass was a key, but the true lock was trust.
Hercule Poirot unlocks both. As the car wound down the cliffside road, Blackthorn Hall receded into the distance, its silhouette a testament to the endurance of truth. The Blackthorn compass, no longer a haunted relic, stood as a beacon of hope, its legacy redefined by the courage of those who guarded it. For Poirot, the case was closed, but the journey of the little grey cells was never-ending, always seeking the next puzzle, the next truth to illuminate. The stars above glittered, and the sea whispered its timeless song. As the car carried them towards London, Poirot gazed out at the night, his mind already turning to the mysteries that awaited. For now, Blackthorn Hall was at peace, and Hercule Poirot, the master of truth, departed quietly, leaving behind a legacy as enduring as the cliffs themselves.